Hey, welcome everyone to Boise Entrepreneurship Week and the panel on perspectives on Idaho's cyber opportunity. My name is Michael Baskin. I'll be the moderator. I'm the innovation advisor for the Center for Advanced Energy Studies, known as CAES, which is the consortium involving the three Idaho public research universities, Boise State University, University of Idaho, Idaho State University, and Idaho National Lab. So 3 universities and Idaho National Lab together representing Idaho. I'd also like to welcome all of our panelists today. Dan DeCloss from PlexTrac. Welcome, Dan. Ed Vasko, Boise State University Institute for Pervasive Security. Welcome, Ed. Sarah Freeman, Idaho National Lab, National and Homeland Security, cyber expert. Welcome, Sarah. And welcome, Natalie Summers, Idaho National Lab, National and Homeland Security and Technology Deployment. Welcome, Natalie. So to kick us off here, I would like to, let's paint a picture of what the Idaho cyber ecosystem looks like. All the different, as many components as we can concisely do. Excuse me, let me go back. Could each person introduce their respective initiatives and what you're working on?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Like you said, Dan DeCloss, founder and CEO of PlexTrac. I've been in the cybersecurity space my entire career, going on 16 years, and started in the Department of Defense and the federal space. Through my time also in the private sector, launched PlexTrac, where we really empower security assessment teams to automate their workflows and collaborate with the people responsible for defending their environments. So it's this concept known as purple teaming. And so we really empower all those workflows for risk identification and remediation.
Thanks again, Michael. I appreciate being here. My name is Ed Vasko. I'm the director for the Institute for Pervasive Cybersecurity at Boise State. And I've spent the past 30 years in industry, where over that 30-year career, I've worked across financial, healthcare, manufacturing, government, pretty much every single possible industry, and have started, run, and exited 5 different cybersecurity companies. So my last company is sold to private equity in 2018. And as I started looking around for my next major challenge, I realized that one of the things that is really required is some real focused effort around workforce development. And so I've joined Boise State to help invigorate and build the necessary knowledge and competency structures to really accelerate our workforce development across the entire cyber need space. Glad to be here.
Sarah Freeman, thank you so much for having me, Michael. I am an industrial control systems cybersecurity analyst at Idaho National Laboratory, where I have worked the last 8 years. But before that, I worked in financial crime. There's cybercrime activities more generally, so more on the IT space. Working hard over at INL to try and expand this space. There's definitely a need in terms of the workforce development. And there's some limitations and differences when we talk about protecting critical infrastructure and looking at operational technology security that are really important to highlight when we're trying to develop new capabilities and growth areas.
Natalie Summers, here with Idaho National Laboratory, Technology Deployment, National and Homeland Security. Started out in nuclear forensics and somehow fell into the cyber world, always more with a focus on innovation or identifying the huge gaps that are occurring and how do we strategically attack those so we're keeping up with the needs. So
awesome, thank you. So we got purple teaming with PlexTrac and Dan, and we've got a career of cyber works with Ed now at Boise State University, working on workforce development on the cyber side. Sarah, ICS security, and sound like a financial cyber sleuth past, and working hard out of Idaho National Lab. And Natalie with the innovation perspective with Idaho National Lab, as well as the National and Homeland Security, the cyber team there as well. So awesome. We got a lot of complementary perspectives here is my initial observation. So going back to, we've got this aggregate, but can we paint a bit of a picture of what the cyber ecosystem in Idaho looks like given the private sector university lab perspectives here?
Yeah, so I'd say from an education perspective, I've joined Boise State about 16 months ago, and seen some of the reasoning for my wanting to join come to fruition, being that we're across the state seeing really great opportunities, really great efforts being put forward, both in the traditional IT cyber research as well as OT research. That's across the entire university ecosystem. So we have strong research capabilities at all three major four-year institutions. We're also seeing this, as I mentioned, the workforce development needs being met through really strong collaboration between our community college and technical college organizations, as well as our universities. Some examples, we have really strong 2+2 or associate degree turning to bachelor degree pathways. We have ongoing curricula development for post-bac degree pathways and master's programs and PhD programs throughout the state. So I look at the opportunities both around research and critical infrastructure, research around traditional IT cybersecurity, and the workforce development efforts going on across the state as kind of the key higher education elements that allow us to build a really terrific ecosystem of workers, of entrepreneurs, to really make Idaho a cyber hub for, if not for the region, definitely for the nation as a whole in the long term. And I think the overarching goal that we have is both reaching out and enabling further pathway development within our secondary and our elementary school programs, as well as reaching into industry and working with great companies like PlexTrac and organizations like INL to say, what does industry need and how can the university and community college environment help ensure and enable that need?
Awesome. 2-year, 4-year development, things going across the state, and sounds like a real strength from what I understand, and compared to other states of what Idaho's really getting after. And Dan, what are you seeing from the private sector side?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's exciting is that obviously the tech scene in Idaho in general, from an entrepreneurship perspective, is growing and is very strong. And with that continues to bring that cyber component, whether or not you're actually starting a cyber company like us versus having cyber be a part of your growth strategy, as any startup that's in the cloud-based aspects or providing services that are online. I think that the awareness is continuing to grow in the private sector throughout the state, and then continued partnerships with organizations in both in the educational perspective and federal perspective, like INL and DHS and BSU and all the other institutions across the state. Idaho State has some good programs and those kinds of things. So everybody, I think, is continuing to get more awareness. And I think that what's exciting for me, having been a practitioner for a long time, is the awareness that it's not just the cyber technical people that we need to be aware of cyber security, right? And that the entire workforce needs to continue to be aware of the issues, and it takes a village, to stay secure, so to speak. So I see the ecosystem growing substantially here in the state, and that's encouraging.
Sarah, what are you seeing out of Idaho National Lab? And because she didn't say it, I do need to invite her to talk a little bit about this book that just came out. So maybe in addition to telling us what you're seeing at INL from the cyber side, you can mention the book that is recently published.
Of course. And as Edward and Dan mentioned, I think they highlighted a lot of key things that make Idaho a little bit unique. From my perspective, I'm not an Idaho native. I'm a transplant. I'm not from California, but I'm not going to say where I'm from because it's not great. But in any case, one of the nice things about the space is how close the community is. It really is an ecosystem, but it's a microcosm of everything we see at a national level. I do spend a fair amount of time working with numerous government entities, both federal, now a little bit with state, as I'm supporting DHS activities as well. And what's interesting about what both Edward and Dan highlighted is there's some really nice features of being kind of a closer knit community, especially when you're talking about incubating ideas and really trying to address some of the gaps that we see either in cybersecurity or technology research writ large. So highlighting that and a plug for the book, I suppose. Idaho National Laboratory is definitely occupied that awkward space between private sector and the public federal space for a long time. They do have a very close relationship with DHS, but they also work with other entities, but obviously Department of Energy in terms of their research plans. As part of that process, particularly in my group, we are very much threat intelligence focused, especially within my own department. And one of the issues we've been dealing with is that discrepancy or the gap between our defensive strategies and what we're witnessing on the threat space. So because of that, and built on those kinds of experiences from a number of our engineering-based subject matter experts and our cyber researchers over the years, there was a lot of feeling that we really need to change how we looked at workforce development. Long-term strategic workforce development definitely needs to be addressed, but we were seeing more of a tactical need as well. So there was an immediate security issue, and that's where the book and the general process, consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering, originated from. So using that philosophy or recognizing that discrepancy between that gap between the red and blue, how can you quickly jumpstart maybe even the incubation phase within the blue teams to really try and address some of those gaps.
Very interesting, seeing different pieces coming together here. And Natalie, from your perspective, and what are you seeing? What is as we paint a picture of what the Idaho cyber ecosystem looks like? I know you have kind of multiple skill sets here. You also work sometimes with developing students, but also with innovators and lab scientists at Idaho National Lab.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really liked about working with the lab is how they try to build connections. So all the way from SANS had programs like Girls Go CyberStart, supporting competitions with that, doing outreach through our STEM programs all the way from K through 12, partnering with colleges for activities like B-Sides and for the CyberCore Summer Camp that is a collaborative effort across all of the units. Launching things like Pi Cafe is a new thing that's coming out that's meant to take the resources being developed by those collaborative groups and make it accessible throughout more of the year. The things that are happening right now are pretty endless if you actually just start Googling a few keywords. So I think creating the connections to leverage them as effectively as possible, where each group's individual strengths are leveraged to work together more effectively rather than to compete with each other. And I think that's something we've tried really hard to keep a focus on.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm not as familiar with B-Sides, but I know you have chapters throughout the state, and there's from Moscow and Boise, Pocatello, Idaho Falls, so all kinds of things going on. So pretty rich, and someone who is from California, a lot going on here in Idaho, and so we painted a picture a little bit, but I kind of want to tack towards Dan now, really, and it's Boise Entrepreneurship Week, so you're launching a cyber business. You've got some previous experience, but can you talk a little bit more about the value proposition of business, but also, paint a picture of what it's like to actually launch a business, and if you're going for financing, if you're growing, and just tell us how you're baking the cake.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I mean, I think having had the experience, I'm pretty much an Idaho native. I grew up around here. I did go to California for graduate school, and that's where I got started in the DoD, and then quickly wanted to move back. So I dragged my wife. We met down there, and I dragged her up here, and now she loves it. So, but I think that the value prop obviously is the efficiency gains and helping improve the talent shortage that we have in the space. That's really our more abstract mission at PlexTrac, right? Is just helping everybody stay focused on doing the right work in security and eliminating waste wherever possible. So I mean that's just kind of the high level of what we do without getting into too much of the details. But it's been fun, I would say. I mean, launching a business is never easy, and Ed knows this as well. But and maybe others on the panel I'm not aware of, but it's been fun doing it here in Boise. We've definitely made it our mission to make an impact in the community here as well as the industry. So the nice thing is that we are really in a good time period for startup growth in Boise specifically, and I think throughout the state as well. Working with people like at Trailhead and the Idaho Technology Council, and then having investor groups like Stage.0 coming in and really planting a flag here, and then catching tailwinds of other community of other startups that have really done well in the space, not necessarily security, but Count, T-Sheets, Truckstop.com, all the Clearwater, obviously, all these great companies that have now grown and had some form of an exit, and so people are continuing to move into the space. So just a good confluence of where we're at has helped us continue to grow the company here and not have to feel like we got to make some decisions about maybe we go to a Seattle or a Salt Lake or in Austin to try and make sure we have the talent necessary to grow the business. So I just highlight that specifically. So yeah.
And Dan's being modest, but the reality is that he's built a phenomenal company. He's got a great idea, and he's building an even better platform that's scaling and getting national and international focus. And the great part there is that, as he mentioned, the ecosystem for funding at the private equity venture capital level, they are taking notice of urban environments, growth environments in growth states like Idaho and the Treasure Valley and Boise. And Dan and his team are truly representative of the type of entrepreneur to hyper growth kind of organizations that I know we're going to be building here across the state. And as like I said, he's being extremely modest, but the outreach that he's been able to create in the venture capital and growth equity, private equity environments is really bringing a lot of attention. As well as he mentioned, the recent some of the recent transactions that have occurred in the tech space specifically, but also in the tangential areas of cyber with Count, with T-Sheets going to Intuit, and many of the other organizations that are being built in the Treasure Valley. So Dan and his team there are really they're kind of the vanguard to showing the rest of the world that Boise has a terrific ecosystem and that Idaho has a terrific set of structures and a great workforce to really accelerate these kinds of platforms out of the traditional tech hubs around the nation.
Let's rise together is kind of what I'm picking up at about these bigger companies also exiting, but also kind of the next wave, Dan and other companies growing in their in their steps and then and taking it to another level, and Boise really emerging as a leader in Idaho, but also generating additional financial interest. So I do want to go to another part of eastern Idaho now. I want to go out to Idaho Falls to Sarah and Natalie and kind of look at what the Idaho National Laboratory brings into the ecosystem from its, I'm aware that, international folks are always coming into Idaho Falls for the lab's capabilities and folks from all over the U.S. But here I can actually ask the cyber folks what they actually do, if they can talk about it, and maybe a little bit about INL's cyber portfolio. And I'm going to disclaimer for everyone, DHS is Department of Homeland Security. So we may have a lot of acronyms in this panel, but Sarah and Natalie, what you're seeing from the INL side, and really also the little bit about Department of Energy Labs, where they contribute to this particular area.
Thank you for correcting me on that acronym. I actually had several Department of Homeland Security critical infrastructure security agency meetings this morning, so I'm a little bit into the acronym mouthful already today, and I'm only on my second glass of coffee. So technically, I guess if you were going to say somebody is not familiar with Idaho National Laboratory, how do we describe the space that they operate in? The first thing that is probably important to notice or highlight, besides as in some cases a separating feature from some of the other labs, is that Idaho National Laboratory has a charter that specifically directs them towards what are considered hard problem research areas. And the nice thing about that is those are things that are very difficult to get funded outside of those federal circles, because it's not necessarily, in some cases, it's research that hasn't been proven. So it can be very difficult to get venture capitalism or other types of funding. It also allows us to do really high risk research. That's one of the ways that Idaho National Laboratory has actually excelled, because of the fact that they do have a large facility in the center part of the state, 980 square miles. That allows them to really test out certain things that wouldn't make sense for either a small entity, just because the initial investment or the potential risk that research might fail. But that really helps us build on that foundational knowledge when we talk about scientific research. So coupling those things together, the Idaho National Laboratory, specifically National Homeland Security, has a huge focus on trying to bring together multiple domains that don't traditionally play nicely together. I think that's getting better every day, but for a long time, these were things that were considered very separate. And the example I like to use actually is because the history of the lab is focused very much on developing instrumentation and control systems for nuclear power plants, a little bit of a niche area, if you can imagine. There was the experimentation there was designing that technology and then testing it to various failure scenarios so they could understand how to make it more resilient. But having that background where the engineer was part of the core discussions and then ultimately branching into the cybersecurity space for those same very systems, it allowed them to merge traditional cyber research domains, computer science domains, cybersecurity domains with some of those engineering, whether they be power engineers, instrumentation and control engineers, nuclear engineers, so just across the board. So that multidisciplinary approach has really helped them to try and or successfully bring together different perspectives to some of those hard problems. Collectively, there's a number of research domains, I would call them, that National Homeland Security and Idaho National Laboratory collectively are focused on. Those range everywhere from security and resilience of electric grid operations, from transmission, distribution, to generation, recognizing the need for smart technologies and grid technology of the future to include things like grid storage, distributed energy resources, renewable energy of the wind and solar type, in addition to the nuclear aspect. And obviously there is a huge nuclear research area. Right now, they're focusing a lot of what nuclear reactors of the future will look like. And a lot of those happen to be microreactors, smaller designs, smaller footprints, closer to demand. And of course, one of my favorites, although I never get to work with them, but one of my favorites is actually nuclear applications for alternative uses. So things like space batteries, which is not technically what they're called, but that's what I call them. So being able to use that to really propel some of the other government research areas, like things necessary for NASA missions and that kind of thing.
And hello, Kat. And certainly with I was just in Washington, D.C. talking to the Air Force a few weeks back, and inclusive with that particular conference was the new Space Force. So the work that I'm sure that's being done at INL from probably has applicability not just within NASA, but also on the DoD side. And so from an entrepreneur perspective, one of the things that I would always try to recommend entrepreneurs keep in mind is that the largest acquirer of both cyber services and cyber technology is the federal government. by far, and across the various agencies and departments. So, if you're looking to grow into or start a business from a BEW standpoint in the cyber arena, the key elements that an INL happens to have, and some of the key directionality that they're going in, there's probably terrific opportunities just to think about not just how is cyber applying on the battlefield, but also how does cyber and general technology and operational technology apply in kind of a not where gravity is allowed, in places where there's no gravity, like space. So lots of opportunity there.
And I just want to jump in very quickly on that statement, because I think Ed brings up a huge point, which is because a lot of the research the lab is doing is that initial proof of concept. And because they're not intended or not supposed to compete with private industry, taking that technology and those new findings, those innovations, that the last mile is really something that the lab needs to partner with private industry to do. So don't be discouraged by the lab's massive research portfolio. That's just actually an opportunity for collaboration and future growth.
And it's one, I think, working with other states throughout my career, it's one that really does add a kind of secret sauce to our state's mix, is the opportunity to be able to have a national lab within our state ecosystem, where these kinds of research elements and, as Sarah said, these kind of hard research areas, meaning hard in that they normally wouldn't be supported by industry. There wouldn't be normal avenues for this kind of research to be undertaken, and INL's at that forefront doing that. And so as those new discoveries are made, that opportunity to be able to partner, take that last mile, commercialize and go out into the market and support those kinds of research opportunities and commercialize them is significant.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and different perspectives here between Dan and Sarah and Natalie and Ed here on how does the university, the lab, and the private sector all come together? And I think we're kind of hearing this, and I want Sarah and Natalie to confirm, but my understanding is that private companies can get their stuff tested at Idaho National Lab and the other Department of Energy laboratories because they're contractor operated their federal facilities. So I'm looking at Sarah and Natalie to kind of confirm that, but also the technology developed there is entrepreneurs can work with the lab to actually license it and take it forward, like Dan's doing with his business, but not from a licensing, but able to take it forward as an entrepreneur is part of that. But I think the key question would be is how does all this come together between the university space, the lab space, and the private sector? Just welcome your thoughts all around them.
I will jump in and try and be brief so that Natalie can highlight some of her tech deployment work and innovation. But from a little bit of a bias here, from a cybersecurity perspective, obviously, when we talk about grid resiliency, it's critical that we work with different private sector entities, commercial vendors, and manufacturers of equipment. So that's, I think, the easiest place to highlight. That is pretty consistent. It has been for almost 2 decades now, that people have brought various components into our ecosystem for testing. I think the other part, though, that's worth highlighting is because of that research angle, because we're always trying to identify new ways to test better or to find vulnerabilities, we do spend a lot of time working directly with universities and various partnerships just to try and push forward and understand what the best and most efficient use of today's technology and resources is to direct against that cybersecurity problem.
Yeah, I know that we're going to get some flack if we don't bring up that we also work in the wireless space. So we talk so much about the cyber physical and critical infrastructure and protecting things that are crucial to the nation running, but that often happens in partnerships where the multiple groups that do come to us and they can help get validated studies through us. That building relationships like that has been really important to us in the Wireless Institute, looking forward to next gen wireless testing, spectrum innovation, and wireless security research and development is sort of another area that maybe we've missed mentioning just so far. But helping as the glue or a third party that we're not trying to compete with industry, we're not trying to build anything that would break those parameters, the partnerships for the research, and then deployment into real world technology. We really need help to get that last bit, as Sarah had mentioned.
Dan, you want to go next, or you want me to?
Go ahead, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think the kind of the image I always keep in my mind about how all three of us work together is essentially, three circles with, intersections in union space, so that it's kind of not quite a Venn diagram, but close, in that INL performs that critical basic research and forward-leaning research. And where the union with the university ecosystem comes in is where we share research opportunities. So our faculty, our researchers are collaborating with INL researchers. Our faculty, some of our faculty around the state hold joint appointments with INL, and likewise INL researchers hold adjunct or sitting faculty relationships within the universities, so that our students are getting exposure to terrific researchers, forward-leaning capabilities being brought by the lab. Our researchers are getting a chance to collaborate within the university ecosystem. We're sharing ideas and collaborating on these new and really, really innovative aspects around, as Natalie mentioned, 5G and how impactful it will be across society and its applications across industry, nuclear, cyber physical, especially within the INL space. And our university researchers really, really emphasize how we work together and how we create this collaborative space. That translates into the other side of the university circle, and that is workforce development. So bringing in new learners, new people who are interested in these particular areas, giving them exposure to these kinds of terrific research areas, giving them exposure to the curricula that's been built across all of the Idaho universities and technical colleges, but also enabling that skill, that knowledge that you're learning in the classroom with the type of competency development that you need to be able to go on out and affect a real impactful, fast opportunity for industry partners like Dan and others around the state and around the nation. So the university kind of sits, at least from my biased perspective, coming from within the university ecosystem, we kind of sit in the middle and are acting as the method through which we're collaborating on one side and we're producing great workforce on the other. And then I don't want to speak for Dan on this, but in my mind, the kind of other component of this Venn diagram is the industry side, which partners with INL for that opportunity for the last mile, as we've talked about around research, as well as is providing guidance and direction and receiving the workforce that's being developed and making best use of the ideas and the people to create a lot of value around Idaho.
Yeah, no, I think what's exciting is is being able to help commercialize and bring to market some of the great research, like that people can partner with, and that maybe even on the research side, they're not able to do that, right? And don't have as much experience in that space. And so being able to tap into the entrepreneurship community or just the business community to be able to partner and find a way to commercialize that and get it into the hands of the greater good, right? And then the flip side of that, also just being able to, what excites me is that we're now getting more exposure to the general population, right? I think one thing, having started a security business, is that, yeah, we sell a security product and we are selling it to security practitioners, but we still have to hire people in marketing. We still have to hire people in sales. We still have to hire people in, customer success that may not have a cyber background, right? So we're training them in the cybersecurity space as well. And so when there's more research in collaboration at the university and the lab level, that means we can tap into people that have some exposure to the space and in whatever profession they actually choose to go in, right? So that's something that's been top of mind for me as we've been on this journey, right?
So some active learning at all levels. It sounds like in a company like Dan right now, it's not like everything's finished right there. You're still learning there, on the job training. Ed, some the capabilities. And I heard you say competency-based learning as well, or skill sets. And I was thinking skills with a Z. We need skills that we measure, and then the technical capabilities.
Make it really cool. Skills with a Z, Michael.
Because when I hear competency, I'm thinking hard skills.
Yeah.
So, and then Idaho National Lab kind of in the middle of this in generating, but in multiple directions. And with that, I would like to thank all of our panelists, Dan DeCloss from PlexTrac, Ed Vasko, Boise State University, Sarah Freeman, INL, and the book author, Natalie Summers, INL. Thank you all for your time and perspectives for this panel within Boise Entrepreneurship Week. And we now turn to the follow-on Boise Entrepreneurship Week program. Thanks again.